Okay, so one-step equations are pretty simple when we're adding and subtracting, but there's a way I'm going to teach you to do it that's going to be the way they want you to do it in middle school next year. I actually changed the way I taught it after tutoring lots and lots of middle school kids. So when you're doing one-step equations, yesterday we did it with a balance. And the balance just shows that both sides are equal. If I put 18 on this side and 2 plus x on this side, you guys know that x has to be what? 16. Good. So I know this because the only number that will make this equation make sense is 16 plus 2, which is 18. So yesterday we did this with the balances. Today it's going to look a little different. And we're going to draw this T here instead of the balance like we did yesterday. So in order to keep something balanced, I have to take off the same amount on both sides at the same time. Otherwise it gets shifted and wonky, right? So the idea is if I take 2 off this side, I have to take 2 off this side. Your goal in algebra is to get all the letters on one side and all the numbers on the other so you can solve for the variable. Otherwise, you don't know what the answer is. So on this, I've got to get the 2 over to the other side. So I'm going to take it off this side and take it off this side because I've got to get the x alone. So 2 minus 2 is 0. This is why I'm subtracting 2, is because I've got to get these zeroed out. So 2 minus 2, those cancel each other's out, and 18 minus 2 is 16. I'm showing you this because it's not going to be as simple as 2 plus x equals 18. Right now it's kind of silly easy, and you're like, I know the answer. But when these are decimals, or these are fractions, or negative integers, or they have exponents like next year, you're going to have to know all these steps. It's super important. What we're doing when we subtract 2 from each side is we're using the inverse operation. When I see inverse, I think opposite. So the opposite of adding in my head is subtracting, because subtraction is the inverse for addition. Multiplication, the inverse is division. Good. So you guys already know these inverse operations are your key to solving algebraic equations. And if you like puzzles, then this will be your favorite subject. I love doing these because I like solving puzzles. And that's really what we're doing when we're solving equations. Your problems are going to be pretty simple at first. So for example, if I have x minus 6 equals 24, I'm going to draw this T, and this is what I adopted from the middle school teachers because this is what all of them use and make them use to solve these equations. So I've got a minus 6 here. So when I see this minus 6, I'm already going to kind of teach you this. I'm already thinking negative 6. Okay, and this negative integers are what you start next year. But I'm already thinking this is a negative 6. So if I want the opposite of a minus 6, what am I going to write down here? A plus 6. Okay, so you're looking for the opposite. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides. You'll learn this the first 3 weeks of 6th grade. Negative 6 plus 6 is 0. You want to zero out this side, so you are left with just an x. And 24 plus 6 is 30. You can always check your work by putting your answer back into the equation. 30 minus 6 equals 24. If you do 30 minus 6 equals 36, that means you did something wrong and you need to go back and fix it. Most of your mistakes can be caught just by putting your answer back into the original problem, and you'll see if you added when you were supposed to subtract, or have the wrong number in there if you just added or subtracted wrong. Does this make sense? Sometimes they're going to write it like this, and for some reason when they write it backwards, my fifth graders freak out. It's the exact same thing as this. If you don't like the problem with the answer first, rewrite the problem and put the answer last. It doesn't matter. But a lot of kids freak out when it's backwards and they do really dumb things. Just rewrite the problem the way that makes your brain feel happy and keep going. So for example, if I have 15 equals x plus 4. I wrote it backwards, but it's going to do the same thing. I've got a plus 4 here, so what do I need to do? Minus 4. So my 4's are now gone because I've taken it off this side. I'm left with x, which is good. That's what I want. And this is super easy because 15 minus 4 is 11. Now I need to show you what the strip diagrams look like for these, because sometimes they're going to show you a picture. But these are super common sense, super easy. So if I have a strip diagram that looks like this, this is just saying 4 plus x equals 15, okay? This outside number is always going to be your sum. These two numbers are your add-ins. You're just adding these together. Sometimes it'll have 2 boxes, sometimes it'll have 3. For some reason, a lot of people didn't learn how to do the strip diagrams before, but when you have these boxes together, it's just adding together. On some of these problems, they are going to have a strip diagram that looks like this. Oops, sorry. And they'll have the variable on the outside. Don't freak out when they do this. They used to put a question mark or an empty box here before in your earlier math classes. Guys, that's just 15 plus 7. It can't get any easier than that. So don't be scared when you see the boxes. Usually the boxes give you the answer, okay? But I don't spend a lot of time on these boxes because next year your equations are so complex, the boxes don't make any sense. But if you see these boxes, that's what it means. If it's got 2 numbers side by side, we just add them together. If it's missing one of these, that just means you subtract, and you can set up the equation and just solve it that way. There's one thing that's tricky. So if you're sleeping, wake up now. There's one thing that's really tricky when I teach this every year, and that's this one setup. For this equation, 12 minus x equals 3. I know some of you guys are thinking that's silly. I know it's 9, but I'm giving you the easy equations. You need to know how to solve it. And I have a problem here. I can't have a negative x. Okay? You don't want a negative x because this means negative 1x. And again, you're not going to do this until middle school. So when you have a number minus x equals another number, we're going to have to swap these around. I've got to push this to the other side. My friends that like Stranger Things, when they go to the upside down, how's everything there? It's all backwards, right? Okay, so if you think about, here's your little magic portal. When you push them to the upside down to the other side, your negative x becomes a positive x. And this 3, when you move it to the other side, becomes a negative 3. Okay, I'm kind of pushing you into 6th grade stuff, but you're going to have to use it next year anyway. If you have a negative x or a minus x, you need to push it to the other side because you've got to make it a positive x to get your answer. Does that make sense? You don't want to ever have a negative x. And next year, they're going to teach you to divide both sides by -1, but honestly, if you just swap them around, it's way easier. I'm going to show you one more and then we're going to practice. So if I have 15 minus x equals 9, as soon as I see this negative x, I want to push it to the other side. You don't want it to be a negative. You want to push it to the other side and have it be a positive x. Does this make sense? So I've got 9 here. What do I want to do? -9 or +9? So I'm taking 9 off both sides because if I only do it on one side, is my scale balanced? No. And your whole answer is wrong. So I'm taking the 9 off this side. I want to get rid of the 9s so the x is all alone. Otherwise, I'll never find the answer to my question. And 15 minus 9 is 6, and I'm done. I can always check my answer. 15 minus 6 equals 9. Does this make sense? Check. Until you get really good at this, guys, save yourself some grief and write down the equation with your answer in it. Because if you put 15 minus 6 equals 9, then you know you're right. If you put 15 minus 21 equals 9, don't you know you have a problem? That means you added when you were supposed to subtract. If you check your answer every time, it'll take your 80 to 100 really fast. Give me a thumbs up if this makes sense. Just remember, inverse means opposite. And when you learn integers next year, they teach you at the very beginning of 6th grade, the opposite of -3 is +3. Okay? The opposite of 4 is -4. If there is no symbol ahead of the number, that means it's a positive number. And I'm teaching you this a little bit early, but it always helps my kids at the beginning of their 6th grade year. You understand what a negative number is. If you've ever lived someplace where it gets really cold, if it gets below 0, it starts going -2, -5 degrees, and then you just stay inside and don't go out, right? If it gets below 0, that's really, really, really cold. So it's just like temperatures. If you live in North Dakota, you understand what negative temperatures are. Raise your hand if you've lived someplace super cold before. Yeah. So any place that's super cold, those temps get below 0, they're all in the negative. And next year they're going to teach you all about that.